when you think about the work that you didn't just sit there going, God, I wish I could get this job. I wish I could find something. You really did the work, Zach. You did the work that most people think they're doing because they're thinking about it. You were really focused on what you were passionate about, the companies you wanted to be in the company of, and what you could offer them. So when you walked in that door day one on the job, which must have been within days, weeks of that offer, how did that feel?
It was a mix of invigoration and probably the worst imposter syndrome that I've had in my career. And the imposter syndrome is a thing that I have learned to coexist with.
Yeah.
It continues to bubble up at different points in your career.
Yeah.
I work at Google. I'm lucky enough to work at Google, which has some of the smartest minds on the planet.
Right.
And many people that didn't just go to theater school,
Right.
but have incredible educations in this space. So, but ultimately, I had to quell the imposter syndrome and remind myself just what you said, that I had a vision. I made this happen. Obviously, something I said connected
Yeah.
with the leadership at this organization. Just appreciate the gift of the opportunity and put everything that you have into it.
Right.
And that sort of helped me get through that, at least that first few months where I was really trying to figure out, like, what is the company, what is my
Right.
role, what can I do, how can I contribute and drive impact. And then once you start having those first successes, I think that sort of fuels where
Yeah.
you go from there.
Well, and it's interesting. And I just sort of thought of this because we do talk a lot about imposter syndrome in these conversations. And, if you can see her, you can be her is such a common and well-known expression. And I think it's so important if we can see ourselves in a role, we can become that. And there is something very beautiful and very aspirational about being able to put on rose-colored lenses for 5 minutes, an hour, a week, 3 months, a year, whatever that is, to get ourselves to that place that we want to be. I mean, I have built a business over 30 years of not knowing everything, surrounding myself with incredible people, asking the questions, trying to figure out what I don't know so that I can learn what I don't know. And there's always you don't know what you don't know. But I think, this notion of imposter syndrome, and even though you were deeply and understandably feeling that, I think for so many of us, it's important to know that it's okay to get comfortable, as you said, with being in that space, because that is what's going to pull you to the other side or to a new place that you want to be, and where and how we can reinvent some part of our lives. So I think it does coexist in a really wonderful way if we choose to frame it that way, right? So that's really
Exactly.
incredible. You were there for how long at Guild City, and what sort of became that next aha moment for you that you decided it was time to move along?
Well, oddly enough, it was less than 2 years, but it was one of those magical moments where I think we had the right brand, the right team, the right budgets, the right passion. It was just the right moment culturally, and so I have to say, all of my colleagues have gone on to do incredible things post that experience. But I did actually have another aha moment within
Yes.
that organization, which is interesting. And then we can move on from this
No,
section. But
please. I love it.
I mentioned Nate Richardson earlier, and listen, we were a fast growing startup at the time. It was like whack-a-mole in terms of
Yeah.
like new needs of the business popping up and rising. And at one point, I was managing 7 different departments because I was there, and I was, seemingly effective and just good at sort of getting things off the ground and launched and whatnot. And Nate and I had a meeting, and he said, first of all, you're doing a great job, and I'm promoting you, which was fantastic. Secondly, I'm taking 6 of your 7 departments away so that you can truly focus and go deep and have tunnel vision in the area that you came here to do, and do the
Wow.
thing, show us what you can do in that area. And then third, just one piece of constructive feedback is you lack executive presence. Your team can feel when you're stressed. We can feel like you're stressed. You need to become that virtual, duck on gliding across the water. Doesn't matter what's happening below the surface, but we need to see cool, calm, collected executive Zach Overton.
That's some pretty intense constructive criticism and opportunity, obviously. Or not.
It is, and it was, but it was literally, it was a chapter, a chapter change in my life and my career. It was one of those Oprah like, oh my God, that's it. That's the thing that I thought that I needed to act that way so that people knew that I was bearing the brunt of the business and the weight of the opportunity and the necessity. But it actually became a huge unlock for me. And it did allow me to really go deep in the vertical that I came there to do, and to, build entertainment campaigns that spanned, guilt women and guilt men and home and taste and jet setter and all the different areas of the business that we had at the time. And really was a huge unlock for me personally in terms of how I present myself, how I manage and whatnot. But ultimately, when you start to see little cracks in the foundation and you're like, oh, wait a minute, I think the business and leadership and the board and all of the things are going in a different direction than where I'm really excited about, where I want to take things. It's an inflection point. And I a colleague of mine introduced me to the then new CEO of Red, Bono's AIDS organization, or Product Red. Who invited me to come join the team to sort of help reignite the brand. They had, they were at the forefront of social impact through consumerism, right? They Product Red launched before Tom's, before Warby Parker, before we had this concept of buy one, give one, and B Corps and all of those things. And yet, here at this point, which was, I guess, 2012, they were at an inflection point where they were like, wait a minute, now we are in a post-social society. Purpose is built into many brands. What is our unique position? And I was a little desperate for some purpose as well.
I was going to say,
HIV/AIDS is a topic that, me as a gay man, it was incredibly important to me. I grew up, I'm dating myself, but I was a teenager in the 90s. And for me at that time, it wasn't a question of if, it was when would I contract the disease? Can I make it to 20? Can I make it to 25? Can I make it to 30? And so, the opportunity to do some really important work here that still, is engaging with brands and doing those things, but has
and
some
probably
real-world
also,
impact.
Zach, I would imagine comfortably being around others who were comfortable having the conversations. That had to have been really important right then as well, both professionally and personally, I would imagine. Being in rooms where, today we're fast forward to where we are today versus then, it's a very different world that we're living in, and we're much more comfortable having all of those conversations in probably most rooms, not all rooms, and we've got some work to do there. But I would imagine that must have been very sort of soul freeing in a way to be in rooms where these conversations were part of the work you were doing as well.
So true. Not only where it was a sort of a free space to have these very important and challenging conversations, but the opportunity to inspire people, right? Yeah. And that, like, wait, if I can inspire you, Kathy, to get your brand to partner with us, and then use all the power and the platform and the community of your brand to inspire others, that domino effect of impact is just so is so incredible. It's such a privilege and an honor and a very big responsibility. So it was the perfect next move for me in my career. And also, again, another one where I had incredible imposter syndrome. Here I was working with, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the One campaign, and having policy conversations, and working with with amazing brands like Apple and Bank of America and Starbucks and whatnot. But again, sometimes you just need to take that, coexist with imposter syndrome, be like, that's okay, that's serving me. It's
and they were probably
humble.
Looking at you going, wow, how are we in the room with Zach Overton?
I highly doubt that.
As
but thank you
I
for
often
saying
have
it.
my sister remind me when I call her for the same reason, and I go, "Why are people listening to me?" You know, it's very precious. But you know what? Clearly, you were bringing the magic and the secret sauce of Zach to these companies, and you know, look at where you are today. So from there, you then transitioned to Samsung. Was that an aha moment? Was that a pull? Was it a push? What was that little moment of transition?
So I did get tapped by the Samsung team to join their organization, which was funny because I was a pretty diehard loyalist to another tech brand at the time.
Yeah.
But they were launching this experiential flagship in the meatpacking district of my hometown, New York City, and it was a hard hat construction zone. The project has been floundering, and they were like, something about your my sort of finger on the pulse of culture, I think appealed to them. And so I saw it as a huge opportunity to get in at the ground floor and really influence what this could be, right? If I went to some of the other more established tech brands at the time, I felt like I would be very limited in terms of what I could what I could do and where I could put my stamp and my fingerprint on it, because they're very playbook oriented. And so it was also a realization. I've always been a bit of a tech head, and it's been a passion area for me to finally fully immerse myself in the tech space. Was incredibly exciting. And I will say, because I joined Samsung and had almost to the day, I had 100 days to figure out what we were going to do with this space. What are we going to call it? What are we going to put in it? We have to hire a staff. We have to have values and a brand purpose, and all the things of building a brand and getting ready to launch this space. I had such tunnel vision on that project that luckily the imposter syndrome sort of went away
There
for a
was no
while.
room for it.
Like there just wasn't time. There
Right.
weren't, I was literally, living off of power bars and fumes. But it was such an exciting opportunity. So I was very
Well,
lucky and grateful
and
to have that
kudos to
opportunity.
you and your team, because what you built there was iconic. It was sort of ahead of its time in terms of the brand experiential, immersive experience. I spent a lot of time in there because I'm in New York all the time. And, you and I saw each other there while you were doing your thing and talking about projects. The programming you did was iconic. You created a space that brought brands to life. And I've spent years working with malls and mixed use real estate projects, bringing brands to life in, 10 by 10, 20 by 20 areas in the middle of a mall, going, wow, this is the experience. No, you created what was truly the immersive experience, and you did lean into it, and you did magical things.
Oh, well, thank you.
No,
That means
you
a lot coming
did.
from you.